John Garrity is a skilled engineer specializing in the construction of skyscrapers in Florida. One day, he finishes work earlier than planned and heads home. In the car, he listens to the radio, where they report about a comet named Clark that is approaching Earth. When John arrives home, he meets his wife, Allison, who is on the treadmill. The couple has an awkward conversation about the upcoming birthday of their 7-year-old son, Nathan. From their dialogue, it becomes clear that their relationship is not in the best shape. Nathan returns from his walk and happily hugs his father. John and his son go to Nathan's room, where John praises his drawings, including one of the comet Clark. They lie down on the bed together, and their conversation turns to a medical device that helps Nathan regulate his insulin levels, as he has diabetes. They also discuss the difficulties between John and Allison. Soon, the whole family gathers in the living room, where the television broadcasts news about the comet, which is moving at incredible speed and leaving icy debris in its wake. That night, the Garritys sleep in separate rooms. The next morning, the family prepares for Nathan's birthday party. John is grilling meat while listening to the radio, where they talk about the Clark comet, which is reportedly approaching Earth, but there is supposedly no reason to panic. Allison approaches John and asks him to go to the store for some additional items for the party. Taking his son with him, John heads to the store. Upon arriving, he notices an unusual atmosphere. People are looking at the sky, where numerous military planes are visible, and everyone's gaze is fixed on the comet on the horizon. While John and his son are shopping, John suddenly receives a notification on his phone. Shortly after, he receives a government call. Confused, John realizes that no one else in the store has received such notifications. Over the phone, John is told that his family has been selected for evacuation to an underground bunker designed to protect them from the impending threat. Meanwhile, a similar warning is broadcast on the Garrity household's television, but Allison busy styling her hair and with the nose of the blow dryer. John, after paying for his purchases, quickly heads home, noticing more and more military vehicles on the roads. When he finally arrives, John sees that the party has started and the guests have already arrived. John immediately approaches his wife Allison and asks if she received the emergency alert. Allison, slightly puzzled, replies that she thinks it's just a regular drill. However, John doubts her words and realizes the situation is far more serious. After a brief conversation, the couple returns to the guests. Everyone is attentively watching the news, where it's reported that the Clark comet is expected to fall into the Atlantic Ocean. Since it poses no immediate threat to the residents, the guests remain calm. However, the situation changes and the comet veers off its predicted course, and the house begins to shake slightly due to a sudden earthquake. John runs outside and sees a flock of birds flying frantically in one direction, as if instinctively trying to escape the danger zone. Suddenly, a powerful shockwave shakes the surroundings, and John falls to the ground. He returns to the house, where the guests are frightened, and the news reports that the estimated impact location of the comet was wrong. Instead of the ocean, Clark crashed into central Florida, creating a shockwave stretching for thousands of miles. The city that took the hit was completely destroyed, and all 400,000 of its residents had disappeared from the face of the earth. At that moment, John receives another emergency alert, and a similar message appears on the TV. However, just like before, none of the guests have received such an alert. The message states that John and his family are entitled to evacuation, but it is strictly forbidden to take anyone other than family members. He is also sent a code, which will allow them to board a plane heading to a safe shelter. The couple's friends are outraged as to why only the Garrity family was chosen. Everyone rushes home, hoping that they might have received the coveted code on their TVs as well. Meanwhile, the family hurriedly begins packing. John is worried about whether they'll have enough insulin for their son Nathan. Nathan, in turn, anxiously asks if Grandpa will be coming with them. Allison is preparing food for the long journey, her eyes fixed on the distressing news. Meanwhile, Nathan stands outside and tells his father that the sky is on fire. As they get into the car, they see that none of the neighbors received the evacuation code. Before they leave, a friend of John's approaches the car and warns them that a fragment of the comet is heading towards Earth, capable of wiping out all life. The family drives off, but they are stopped by a neighbor who begs John to take her daughter with them to save her. However, John refuses, knowing that the girl is not listed among the evacuees, and in the end, she may be left alone at the border. On the way, the family witnesses people in panic looting stores and smashing windows. John doesn't understand why they were chosen for salvation. When the car gets stuck in a massive traffic jam, he decides to take an alternate route. Along the way, they continue to listen to the news on the radio, which makes it clear that the consequences of the comet's impact will be far more catastrophic than expected, and humanity is facing total extinction. Upon reaching the airport, John and his family encounter a huge crowd protesting at the entrance because many people are not listed among the evacuees. However, they manage to get inside. They receive special wristbands confirming their identity and a bag for essential items. While Allison is packing, she realizes that the supply of insulin for Nathan was left in the car. John asks how much time is left until departure and decides to return to the car to get the medication for his son. Meanwhile, Allison, worried about his absence, rushes to a soldier and explains that her husband ran back to get insulin, which is crucial for their diabetic child. The soldier takes her to the person in charge of the evacuation, who informs her that people with chronic illnesses are not allowed on board. Allison desperately tries to convince her to change the decision, but she is firmly denied and sent back to the car. By this time, John has already retrieved the medical kit and is hurrying back. However, he can't find his family and doesn't know that Allison and the child have already exited the boarding area and are walking to the car. One of the soldiers in charge of boarding assures John that if they have the special wristbands, they must already be on the plane. Relieved, John boards the plane, thinking he will reunite with his family upon arrival. Soon one of the passengers notices John's medical kit and is outraged, pointing out that his nephew, suffering from the same condition, was denied evacuation. John begins to realize that something is wrong and demands to be let off the plane. As soon as the rear hatch opens, screams and military orders to hold the perimeter can be heard from outside. People who were denied rescue have broken through onto the runway. In the chaos, a fuel truck operator is killed, causing fuel to spill across the ground. Realizing the danger, John frantically shouts for everyone to run away. Chaos ensues. People are running everywhere and the sound of gunfire echoes. Suddenly, the thing John feared most happens. The spilled fuel ignites, and the plane explodes. John runs to the nearest officer and asks about his family, but receives no response. At this time, Ellie and their son are at the car when Nathan suddenly starts feeling unwell. John hurries back to the car, but when he arrives, he finds a note from his wife saying they went to the grandfather's house. During this time, Allison and Nathan enter a pharmacy to check the boy's blood sugar levels and get insulin. Suddenly, a shootout breaks out inside the pharmacy. One of the attackers, seeing Ellie with her young son, decides to spare them and lets them go. Once outside, Allison meets a couple and asks for a ride. Soon the driver starts acting strangely. He suddenly throws Ellie out of the car, takes her evacuation wristband, and drives off with Nathan. Ellie is devastated she has lost her son. Meanwhile, John finds a ride and hops into the back of a truck where several other people are already seated. One of the passengers notices John's wristband and explains that only people with important professions are being evacuated. His mother is a doctor, and she was also selected. He also mentions that planes are flying to Greenland and that regular citizens can access flights from a small airport in Canada. As the other passengers listen to this conversation, another man notices John's wristband and decides to take it. A fight breaks out, causing the truck to lose control, and all the passengers are thrown to the ground. In the chaos, John finds a hammer. Fellow passengers, watching from the row, are horrified John has killed a man, an unimaginable act for him. Meanwhile, Allison is trying to flag down a car to get to the airport where her son's kidnappers have taken him. The criminals arrive at the base and attempt to board a plane, pretending Nathan is their child. However, Nathan tells an officer that these people are not his parents and that they stole the wristband from his mom. The military takes the boy and arrests the criminals. After some time, Allison arrives at the base and pleads with the officers to help her find her kidnapped son. Together with a soldier, they begin searching the children's sections and eventually find Nathan in the last ward. A nurse reassures Allison, informing her that Nathan has already received insulin and they have prepared a medical kit with a week's supply of medication. The nurse also offers them the use of a military bus to get to the grandfather's house. Meanwhile, John breaks into a stranger's house in search of water. He turns on the TV and learns from the news that the comet's main impact is expected in less than a day. John finds a set of car keys and drives to the grandfather's house. At the elderly man's home, with whom John has had a strained relationship, some friends are gathered, playing cards and drinking. John arrives. Unfortunately, Allison's father doesn't know where his daughter is, but he sincerely hopes that John will be able to find her and their son. During their conversation, it's revealed that John had problems in his marriage and had cheated on his wife. The elderly man hopes that they will reconcile and rebuild their relationship. Meanwhile, Allison and Nathan arrive at a gas station near the grandfather's house on a military bus. Ellie reaches her father on the phone and tells him their location. The men drive out to meet them. Finally, the family is reunited, and everyone is happy to be together again. At home, John watches a news report about the shelter and realizes that Colin's words were true. He convinces Allison that they need to leave for Canada immediately. The whole family quickly starts packing for the trip. Unfortunately, Allison's father refuses to go with them. He explains that he lived his whole life here with his wife, and it was here that she passed away. The old man wants to die in his own home. John respects his choice, and the grandfather calls him son, which deeply touches John. As they say their goodbyes, Allison realizes she is seeing her father for the last time. Suddenly, an earthquake begins, forcing the Jarrett family to leave the house in a hurry. Before they leave, the grandfather hands John his rifle as a farewell. On the road, John and Allison reconcile, promising each other that they will stay together. As they drive, their car comes to a stop, and they don't understand why the cars ahead are not moving. Suddenly, a heavy hailstorm of comet debris begins. John tries to drive away, but the debris falls everywhere. Allison moves to the back seat to shield Nathan with her body while John looks for shelter and spots a bridge under which they decide to hide. When night falls, the Jarrett family sets off again and soon reaches Canada. On the radio, they hear alarming news. The comet's impact is imminent, and forecasts predict that 75% of all life on Earth will be destroyed. Suddenly, they spot a plane taking off and decide to block its path, trying to stop it. After lengthy negotiations, John manages to convince the pilot to take them on board. On the plane, John dreams of scenes from his happy family life. When he wakes up, the plane is already in Greenland. The surroundings seem untouched by destruction, but suddenly, a massive piece of the Clark comet crashes into a nearby body of water, creating a powerful wave that knocks the plane out of control. Both engines fail, and the plane loses control. The pilots perform the impossible and land the plane, but they don't survive. John tries to free the pilots from the cockpit, but all his efforts are in vain. One of the pilots, before dying, points John toward a plane landing nearby. John realizes that this must be the shelter, and all the passengers head in that direction. Eventually, they find the military shelter, where officers meet them and guide them inside. At that moment, the comet begins to impact Earth. John and his family, now safe, huddle together, while John's mind flashes with memories of the happy times they spent together. 9 months later, Earth is devastated, with cities lying in ruins. However, the radio announces that radiation is no longer a threat. All the survivors, including the Jarrett family, emerge from the shelter and see not only the destruction, but also a bird soaring in the sky, symbolizing that life on the planet is beginning to recover. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and see you next time.